Mickey, can you just speak to the two picks tonight and what you like about each guy?
Yeah, first of all, Pete Werner. Look, he's a guy that we thought a lot of. Very athletic, great instincts, tough. Played will linebacker, but we see him having some versatility. Real good in pass coverage and super smart. Really high football makeup. They speak so highly of him there. All of his coaches, all the people involved at Ohio State speak so highly of him. He's had I think he's had 35 starts there in the last 3 years. I don't think he's missed a game over the last 3 years. So there's just a lot of things to like about this player, and we're excited to be able to get him.
Sean Fazand.
Hey, Mickey, you were able to move up with Denver to get the cornerback. I guess the idea of going up in the draft. How often did you guys have to try that, and to finally get that trade up to get the player? Had to feel good.
Yeah, look, I would say that we were trying to move up, really, all night. We spent the afternoon trying to get toward the top of the second round. We got close a couple times and weren't able to do it. And then the players that we had targeted, went off pretty quickly. So, we decided to let the draft come to us at that point. Later on in the third round, look, Paulson, sat there, his card sat up there. Look, it's at a position that we can use another player. And so it just, became pretty obvious once we got to the area where we could convert the two thirds and move up. We were able to do that, with Denver, which is, coincidentally one of the teams that we talked about. We talked to in the first round about making a deal and never could do it. So we were able to do that this evening.
Luke Johnson.
Hey, Mickey, going back to the Payton Turner pick, was it important for y'all to get a chance to see him in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, just considering everything that happened this year leading up to the draft?
Yeah, look, I think, anytime you have the opportunity to gather information on players, then obviously it's valuable. Payton Turner is a guy that Jeff Ireland talked to me about during our football season. He had seen him and had just done his early evaluation, and was really high on Payton. And so, he mentioned him a long time before we got to the Senior Bowl. Then when we got to the Senior Bowl, we were able to, sit down, visit with him. And so I would say, anytime you can sit face to face with a player, that's valuable information. We're able to do that with the guys at the Senior Bowl.
Doug Mouton.
Yeah, hey, Mickey, going back to last night, Sean said you guys had made a bunch of calls talking about potentially moving up. Did you find that the prices teams were asking in round one were maybe higher than what's been normal in round one? And did that change today, or am I crazy? But it seemed like they were high prices last night.
Yeah, I would say this. Look, I don't think we've worked harder at trying to move up than we did yesterday. We had a lot of conversations with a lot of teams. And look, at the end of the day, I understand it. Listen, we were picked 28. It's a long ways back. I think in the last 20 years, I think there's only been 4 or 5 times where a team has gone from the 20s into the top 10. So that's pretty rare to begin with. And, for someone to do that, they want a ransom. And we're about making a fair trade, but we weren't interested in just, giving up King's ransom for that move, and wasn't able to do it. I think there were some a couple times where it looked like it was going to be considered and maybe happen, but it didn't. And, that happens a lot in this league, and it happens a lot during the draft.
Nick Underhill.
Mickey, I'm sorry if I missed it, but what was your evaluation of Paulson? And do you guys feel like you're set at cornerback now?
Yeah, you didn't miss it because I didn't talk about him. But look, this is a tall, very athletic, another kid that's really super smart. I know David Shaw thinks a lot of him. And I would say probably, I don't know that I would say we're set. Look, this is a player that's going to come in and compete and develop. And I think he does need some development, but, he didn't play this last season. I think he opted out, but he had 8 interceptions in the 2 years before that. He was an all Pac-12 player. And we're excited to see this young man and see if we can develop him. And we'll see where it lies at the end of training camp in terms of, how much he gets to play.
Fletcher Mackel.
Yeah, I apologize. My question was somewhat similar, so I'll just try to follow up there with both of those guys. Sean said last night when Payton Turner that he's going to play this year. As far as these two players coming to positions of perceived need, does that affect how you draft them? Do you look at guys that may be more ready to play, or does that affect what you all do if you feel like they need more seasoning versus less?
Yeah, I think look, it's kind of on an individual basis, right? We like both these players. We like, obviously we like their ability to play the game of football, but we like their makeup. They're both of them are really smart players. They've the prototype in terms of, height, weight, speed, and all the things that the variables you look at relative to players playing in the NFL. Whether they can play or how much they play this year, look, that'll be up to them and up to us in terms of their development. So I wouldn't say that when we're drafting, we're talking a lot about how much they might contribute in year one. That it's a little different when you're looking at first round picks, because generally speaking, you're expecting first round picks to come in and contribute pretty early.
Paul Boron.
Hey, Mickey, I asked this question sort of tongue in cheek, but obviously on the outside, the narrative is you guys love Ohio State players and you guys love to make trades. Do you guys joke about that in the draft room? Do you guys have a laugh about that you guys have such a propensity for both of those?
Yeah, man, we do joke about it a little bit, not about the trades, but we do joke about the number of Ohio State players that have come through here. Look, they're talented. Listen, Ohio State's one of the great programs in the country, and they have a lot of talented players, just like, Alabama and LSU and some of the top programs. I think it's coincidental as much as anything, but we have had a lot of Ohio State guys, and now we got another one.
Mike Triplett.
Mickey, this might be a repeat because I got on while you were talking about the linebacker from Ohio State. But did you say if you have a Mike or Will vision for him?
Yeah, look, he played Will linebacker there. I think, look, that's a good question for Dennis and Sean when you guys get a chance to speak with them a little later. But I would guess that our vision is going to be starting him out at Will, and with the understanding that, look, he's got some Mike linebacker flexibility, but we'll see how that shakes out during training camp.
And then can you just talk about your general feeling on your wide receiver room? It seems like you have a lot of depth, but not a ton of experience. Do you feel like that's a position you did not have to address this offseason?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, we've got some young guys in there that we really like. And yet some of them have some experience. Traquan Smith has played a lot of football for us, and the young guys, Callaway, Deontay Harris, have all contributed. Humphrey, Juwan Jones. So we've got some guys that complement Mike Thomas pretty well. And obviously Mike missed a lot of time this last season, so we're expecting a full season of Mike Thomas this year as well.
Andrew Doak.
Mickey, through these first 3 picks, how much would you say from a position group standpoint, maybe you had to pivot based on how the draft board was coming to you? Like, in theory, if you guys were interested in a corner and then there's a run on them, now you pivot to defensive end and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a pivot. Obviously, we were trying to move up early in the first round for a specific player, specific position. When that wasn't able to happen, and you're picking at 28, you're really just letting the draft come to you and see who's available. And when it's our turn to pick, look, we have 3 or 4 guys that we like a lot. But the guy we liked the most was Payton Turner. So that's why we took him.
Nick Underhill.
Mickey, with the number of new GMs around the league, did that create any difficulties in getting a deal done at all?
Yeah, I didn't really feel like that. No, because I think I said this the other day, is that a couple of these guys in particular have a lot of experience. They may not have sat in the GM seat, but they've been right next to the GM at the places they've been for a lot of years and heavily involved in the decision. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that had a big impact. Although I wasn't able to do a deal with Terry Fontenot, so maybe it did.
Luke Johnson.
And Mickey, it seems like a lot of these guys fit the kind of size, athleticism mold that you guys like and prospect. Just how big was that when you were looking at these guys in particular?
Yeah, I think we always pay attention to, prototype players that meet the, height, weight, speed parameters that we have in our league. Yeah, we also know that there are exceptions but it is a variable. That's basically how I would say it.
And with Turner specifically, it seems like his length was something that stood out to you guys.
Yeah, I think he has exceptional length and size for the position, and he's got a lot of blue traits. Traits that would be considered elite in terms of the measurables and some of the timed shuttles and things like that. So yeah, he certainly has the traits.
Fletcher Mackel.
Mickey, I know in the past you've talked about how difficult it is to make your roster because you all are so deep and so talented. With 4 picks tomorrow, not that I expect you to give away the game plan, but do you think you'll be as aggressive, maybe moving up or trying to move up, or how do you look at 4 picks, especially 3 with very late round selections?
Yeah, again, I think it's more about finding a player that we really covet, and then being aggressive in trying to go get that player. And so we'll see. We'll visit again tonight. We'll puddle up tomorrow during the day before the draft. We'll talk about the players that are still available and who might fit on our roster. And absolutely, one of the things that we talk about is, okay, what is the path to our roster for a particular player? Is it through special teams? Is it beating out another player that's currently on our roster, and what are the chances of that? Hey, can we get this player to the practice squad if he doesn't ultimately make our active roster? So, we discuss all of that, obviously, before we make picks.
Andrew Doak.
Mickey, when you said that you don't feel like a player opting out would be a significant variable in them being disqualified of being considered, does that type of player need to have a pretty significant year before opting out to make you, like in the case of Adebo, like did you feel like his 2018 season was enough to make you comfortable in making a selection like that?
Well, yeah, look, he had 2 full seasons of starting and playing games and did very well. Obviously, we would, in a perfect world, he'd have another season and we'd have the tape and obviously more recent tape. But, ultimately we liked what we saw and I think we were aggressive in acquiring the player.
Last question is from Brett Martell.
Hey, Mickey. With all 3 players in the first 2 rounds being defensive players, I guess that could be seen as sort of a theme, but how do you perceive that?
Yeah, I think I saw a stat that said that's the first time that's happened since 2009. Is that right? Which I didn't know. Again, I think that's just how the draft fell, right? We didn't go into this draft saying, hey, we have to draft a defensive player in the first round, or we have to, draft 3 defensive players, or, in the first 2 rounds or 3 rounds, excuse me. So that's just the way the draft fell. I could envision that it could easily have gone the other way, and we end up talking about drafting offensive players, but that's just the way this draft fell. And look, that's a product of where you're picking. You know, when you're picking 28th, there's a lot of things that happen in front of you, and obviously we had the pick 60 in the second round, and then the two and later in the third round that we were able to convert and move up. So a lot of that's just a product of the picks in front of us.
Okay, we're all set. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.